Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Legal Gym Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today, we're going to be talking about the 4 main areas that you need to be looking out for when you're protecting your online business. And for the show notes for today's episode, which will include all of the links and resources for everything that I'm going to be discussing today, make sure you head on over to hawthornelaw.net/16. That's hawthornelaw.net and then the number 16. Now, let's dive in. But before we get into the amazing content for today's episode, I wanted to let you know about a new training that I'm working on. I'm going to be teaching my 4R framework to get your trademarks registered quickly and easily. In addition, I'm going to be sharing the top 3 mistakes that I see online entrepreneurs make that can absolutely sabotage their brand and even force them into bankruptcy. So if you want to sleep better at night knowing that your brand is protected, you don't want to miss this training. Just head on over to hawthornelaw.net/trademark to get notified when the training is live. That's hawthornelaw.net/trademark, and everyone who attends this training is going to get a free gift, compliments of me. If you are an entrepreneur who's building a brand online, this is one training you don't want to miss. One more time, go to hawthornelaw.net/trademark to get signed up for the notification list today. Hey gang, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Jim and I am a trademark lawyer and YouTube entrepreneur. And on this podcast, we're going to be exploring the practical strategies and tools to help you start, build, grow, and yes, legally protect your own creative online business so that you can enjoy more freedom in your life. That's financial freedom, time freedom, and of course, location independence. Today, I want to share with you the 4 things that you need to be doing to make sure your business is legally protected so that you don't ever have to worry about getting sued, getting a cease and desist letter, and then having to rebrand your business or even getting forced into bankruptcy. Yes, I've told stories on the podcast before about how I had a friend who was doing multiple 6 figures per month, and then he ran into some legal issues and he just went out of business overnight almost. So make sure you stay to the end, because not only am I going to share with you these 4 tips that you need to be thinking about when you're running your online business, but I'm going to share with you which one of these things I think that you should do first. And chances are it's not going to be what you think. Let's jump into the content today. The first thing that you really need to do with your business is you need to create legal separation. And what do I mean by that? I mean that you need to distinguish yourself personally from the business. And the way you create legal separation between yourself and your own personal finances and your business is to set up an LLC. Now, most people are going to use an LLC. Some people may decide to set up a corporation. There are very specific instances when I think a corporation might be necessary, but for probably 99% of the people out there, an LLC is going to be perfectly fine. So an LLC is a great thing, and the number one thing and the number one reason that people form LLCs is because of the limited liability protection it affords you. And what does that mean exactly? It means that it's going to protect your personal assets from your business debts, but what a lot of people don't understand is that it also provides reverse protection as well. It protects your business assets from your personal debts. So a lot of people don't know that about LLCs. It's kind of a cool little feature of LLCs. If you were to get in trouble with, let's say you're getting in a car accident, that's the way most claims arise, and you hurt somebody and they end up suing you, and there isn't enough money with your insurance through your car to pay them, then they can go after your personal assets. And if some of your personal assets include your ownership interest in your LLC, they theoretically could go after your LLC as well. But with an LLC, all they can get is a charging order, which means in most cases, now it varies by state, what that means is they would only be able to collect money from your LLC if you made distributions from your LLC to you personally, and then they would basically be first in line to take those distributions. Now, the difference between that and a corporation is if you own shares in a corporation and they come after your personal assets, they can basically seize those shares in that corporation, and then they can become 100% shareholder of that corporation, and then they can basically go in through the back door and sell off all the assets in your corporation and basically put you out of business. So that's one of the nice things about LLCs is they provide that reverse liability protection. Not only are they protecting your personal assets from your business debts, but they're also protecting your business assets from your personal debts. And the other great thing about LLCs, and why I do recommend that people get set up with LLCs as quickly as they can, is it really flips this switch mentally with you as an entrepreneur. Before you have an LLC, a lot of times people basically are operating a hobby business. And once you set that LLC up, it gives you this feeling of legitimacy. And a lot of times it creates this mental shift where people feel much more confident and much more like they're actually building something as opposed to just running a hobby business. And then the final reason why you really want to think about setting up an LLC sooner rather than later is because of the tax savings you can get when you're making enough money in your business to elect what's called S corporation tax status. Now, you can only elect to be taxed as an S corporation if you have an underlying business entity. If you are just a sole proprietor, you cannot elect that S corporation tax status. And the thing with LLCs is when you set up your LLC, it's not retroactive. You set up your LLC as of the date that you indicate on the paperwork when you file your LLC. That's the date that the LLC is going to start. So whereas if you were to set up your LLC on January 1st and then you waited and then you set up you elected to be taxed as an S corporation later in the year, you can make that retroactive to the beginning of the year, January 1st, when you filed your LLC. But if you had a really good year financially and you decided, you know what, I really want to take advantage of these tax savings with this S corporation, but you didn't file your LLC until June, and then you decide, well, I'm going to go ahead and set up that S corporation, the S corporation is only going to apply to when your LLC got set up. It's not going to go back to the beginning of the year when you were having all that income coming in to your business. So just something to think about. It's probably better to get that LLC set up sooner rather than later because of the tax savings alone. That's another great reason to do that. So that's the first thing that you need to be aware of, is you need to be aware of how to create that legal separation between yourself and your business. And you're going to do that, and 9 times out of 10, you're going to do that with an LLC. So the second thing I want you to be aware of today is that you do not own the name to your business. A lot of people think that when they start a business, they pick a name and they run with it and they're good to go. But the thing is, you do not own that name. Now, you may have some common law trademark rights to that name, but you do not own that name. And so anybody else can come in and take that name from you and, well, not take it from you, but they can start using that name for their own business because you do not have any naming rights to that name. When you file for federal trademark protection, you are actually getting permission from the government to be the exclusive user of that name in all 50 states. So once you have that trademark protection in place, nobody else can step in and use that name. And not only can they not use that name, they can't use any name that's deceptively similar to your name. And so it provides you a lot of great protections from other people infringing on your rights once you have a trademark. Some other major benefits to having that trademark registered are that you can license that trademark to other people, and it can also increase the value of your business if you should decide to sell at some point in the future. And actually, I know of another entrepreneur who had built a brand and he wanted to sell the brand, and the sale was actually held up because he had never filed for trademark protection of the brand name that he came up with. And the reason for that was the company that was buying that brand did not want to buy a brand that maybe was infringing on somebody else. That would have been a big problem, and they know how serious it is if you're infringing on somebody else, so they didn't want to do that. So it's really important to get that federal trademark registered. But the thing is about trademarks are tricky. And if you do them wrong, if you don't fill out the application properly, if you submit the wrong specimen, if your description is too specific or too general, then you could have that trademark get denied. Also, if you don't do a proper trademark search at the very beginning, then it is very possible that you could be picking a name that is being used by somebody else. And so you don't want that to happen either. So you really need to, if you're going to be filing a trademark application, I do recommend you talk to a lawyer. I'll talk about this later on in the show, but I do offer a free 30-minute strategy call with me to talk to you about what your options are in terms of how to go about registering your trademark with the federal U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. And the other thing I'll say about the application is it's deceptively easy. And what do I mean by that? I mean, it's an online application. You go online there. It's kind of an old system. It's like from the 90s, I would imagine. And it's a little bit tricky in the standpoint that it has a lot of words and verbiage in there that describe certain things. But it's pretty simple. I mean, they basically ask you just for the trademark that you're going to be using, the name of whoever's going to be owning the trademark, a copy of the specimen, the class, and the description. And that's basically it. But the problem is, each one of those steps, each one of those things that you need to fill out on the application has legal consequences to it. And if you do it wrong, you're not going to find out until 8 or 9 months when the application gets looked at by a trademark attorney that there's a problem. And if there's a problem, you have to go back and refile. You don't get your application fee, which is expensive. It's $350. You don't get that money back because you messed up your application. So you do want to be careful when you're filling out your trademark applications. Like I said, it is deceptively easy. I would talk to a lawyer. And like I said, we offer a free strategy call if you'd like to talk to us. So that's the second thing that you want to be looking at. All right, the third thing that I want you to be considering is your legal relationships. And what do we mean by that? I mean like the relationships you have with vendors, the relationships you have with your employees and your contractors, the relationships you have with the business coach you hired. Anyone that you have a legal relationship with, you need to make sure you have a contract with that person, and you need to make sure it's in writing. Also, obviously, clients, you need to make sure you have client contracts in place. And so this is very, very important. A lot of people completely gloss over this. They don't get this right. They have vague or hard to really enforce contracts. So you want to make sure you have these contracts in place in every aspect of your business, because without a contract, then it's basically you don't have a lot of legal protections at all. And contracts can do a number of different things. Number one, they can help you avoid chargebacks and refund requests if you have it written explicitly in your contract what you're going to be doing for somebody. Number two, they can help you avoid what we call scope creep, which is where people hire you for one thing and then they keep asking you for more and more and more because you don't have a contract in place that affirmatively says what you are and what you are not going to be doing for that person. And then also what contracts do is they help define who owns the intellectual property that you're creating as part of that relationship, or maybe that the person you're hiring is creating as part of that relationship. Every contract you have should be in writing. And these contracts, they're not just with other people that you're working with. You also need a valid terms of service on your website. You need a privacy policy on your website if you're collecting information from people. This is required by law. And if you're selling a course or a group program, you probably want to have a group coaching contract or a terms of service on your webpage when people check out, that they have to check the box and say, yes, I agree to the terms of this agreement. So contracts are very important, and you need to make sure that you have contracts in your business. And so that's the third thing that I want you to be aware of, is making sure that your legal relationships are protected with valid contracts. So the fourth thing that I want to talk about is your content. And you need to make sure that your content is protected. I just did a coaching call yesterday where somebody was asking about how to go about doing this, and we talked about it in great detail. But basically, the way you protect your content is through copyrights. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, Jim, wait a minute. When we write a blog post, don't we automatically have copyright protection? Yes, that is true. You do automatically have copyright protection. So why would you need to go ahead and register your copyrights with the Copyright Office? Well, the reason you do that is you want to make sure you're registering your most valuable content. And by valuable content, I mean if you've written a book, if you have a sales page that converts really well, if you have a course, a signature course that you're putting out there, those are the type of things that I think are the most important things to copyright. And the reason for that is that if you wanted to sue somebody for copyright infringement, then you have to have that copyright registered and not just filed. It used to be it only had to be filed because it takes like 8 or 9 months to get a copyright back from the Copyright Office. But you need to have it filed and registered with the Copyright Office, meaning you need to have that certificate in hand before you can file a federal lawsuit. Now, yes, there is for an additional fee, you can get expedited service. You can get that copyright certificate back in like a week or so. And there's actually, I think, a spot on the application where you can say, yes, we're in the process of filing a federal lawsuit, so I need this back. And you can pay an additional fee for that. But it's just better to get in the practice of registering your copyright works with the Copyright Office kind of as you put them out there. And when it comes to like blog posts and podcasts and things like that, I'm not here to say that you need to register your copyrights like every single day. I mean, you get a cadence to it, maybe once a month, once a quarter, even once a year, you go in and look and see, well, what do I need to register? And you make sure that gets registered, and you just need to create a system around that. The other main benefit to having your copyrights registered with the Copyright Office is if you did have to sue somebody, then you can get what are called statutory damages, which means that there's a set amount of money that you can get in damages for each count of infringement by the defendant in whatever case you have. And so that's a lot easier to collect than if you have to prove actual damages. And actual damages, you'd have to say, well, listen, my business was hurt because this person, stole my content, and here's how it was hurt. And you'd need to be an economist, you need specialists, and that's very expensive. So it's easier to avail yourself of the statutory damage benefit of having your copyrights registered. The issue with the statutory damages is they're only available if you register those copyrights within a certain period of time after they've been published. So there's a lot of legal nuance to that, because what defines as your copyright being published is the first thing, and then the question of how long do you have after that. And I actually, off the top of my head, I do not know how long. I think it's like 3 months or 4 months. It's not very long that you have to register those copyrights so that you can avail yourself of the statutory damages. So you definitely want to make sure you take advantage of that. So we've talked about 4 things. We've talked about creating legal separation with LLCs. We've talked about claiming your brand name with trademark protection at the federal level. We've talked about protecting your relationships, and we've talked about protecting your content. So which one of these is the most important? Well, in my mind, both LLCs and trademarks are incredibly important. And if you had to line up which you should be doing first, if you're just starting a brand new business, I would say those two would definitely jump to the top of the list. But far and away, the most important one is going to be your trademarks. And the reason I say this is I was working with a client a couple weeks ago, and we came up with a great name, and we went to the trademark office I always do a quick knockout search for my new clients just to see if there's going to be any names that are going to be a problem before we go ahead and do a comprehensive search. And in this case, there was an exact match name that we found from another business that was in the same exact industry, doing the same exact services as this client, and the trademark was just filed a week before we did the search on our mark. And so it just goes to show that time is of the essence with trademarks. There's a limited number of names out there. You want to get them filed as quickly as possible. And so that's why I would say getting your trademark in is probably the most important thing you can do. The clock is ticking. The trademark office is a first to file system. So even if you've been using a name for 5, 6, 7 years, if somebody comes in and files a trademark before you, they're going to have priority with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. And there's fewer and fewer names available each and every day. So you definitely want to make sure you get your brand names registered as trademarks with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, and you want to make sure you do that as quickly as possible. So that's the number one thing I would say to make sure your business is legally protected. And the other reason for doing that is there's just such a huge risk. I mean, people say, yeah, I can get sued if I don't have an LLC. Yes, you could. But the likelihood of getting sued is much less than the likelihood that you could be infringing on somebody else's name, and they could basically put you out of business or force you to go through an expensive rebrand if you're using their name. So this is something you definitely need to be aware of, and something you definitely should be doing. All right, all you Legal Gym listeners, now that you know more about how to legally protect your online business, you are ready to implement, because if there's one thing we love to do over here at the Legal Gym, it's to take massive action. So if you haven't already, make sure to check out the show notes for today's episode. You can get a rundown of all the links and resources that we talked about here by visiting hawthornelaw.net/16. That's hawthornelaw.net, the number 16. In addition, if you're interested in learning more about how to legally claim the rights to your brand name, then you want to schedule a free branding strategy call with me. That's right. For a limited time, I'm offering a free strategy call. I don't know how long I'm going to be doing this, to talk about the branding for your online business and how to make sure it is legally protected. If you would like to learn more, head on over to hawthornelaw.net/TM-video. That's hawthornelaw.net/TM-video. On that page, we have lots of great information about the process of protecting your brand so that you don't have to worry about getting a cease and desist letter or being forced to rebrand your business, or even being forced out of business. Once again, the website to learn more about that is hawthornelaw.net/TM-video. Thank you so much for listening today, and I look forward to talking with you in the next episode. Take care, folks.